brought home to us in a new way, and it's hitting us all in different ways. So the opportunity to actually think about that and why it matters is really quite an opportunity to be seized, really. And it reminds me of, I suppose it's what, I don't know how long ago it was, 20 years ago, that well, maybe not quite that long, we started a transition town in Wimbledon. And that sort of bit the dust eventually, but things like green coffee and abundance all grew out of that initiative. And one of the things about the transition movement, which some of you I'm sure will be familiar with, is it's looking forward to in a positive way to prepare for, well, what they thought was the post-peak oil period. For whatever reasons, peak oil, the idea being that we've been using more and more oil and gas and petroleum products over the decades, but there is a point now, really, where if we keep burning it, we can't, the whole world is going to go up in irreversible climate breakdown. So we've got to stop using it, and that then affects all sorts of things. Because if you're going to stop using quite so much oil and fuel and so on, you've got to have less transport. That's not just us traveling, but it's all our food and all the raw materials and all this sort of stuff. So that then affects agriculture, because there's an awful lot of, even if you just buy local in Britain, the tractors, the fertilizers and so on take a lot of fuel. If you've got, half our food comes from abroad these days. So if you think about all those ships and planes and so on, that's important. So the idea of transition was to think about local resilience, making our local community and our local ecology and economy more self-sufficient. And it's really nice. It's wonderful to be in Merton, where we've got this, we've got a really good recycling compared with many other boroughs, and we're reusing some of our waste to produce heat and so on. And I think I'm very proud of that. You see lots of moans, but I think we can be pleased with that. So the lockdown really kind of brought that home to many of us in a way that it hadn't before, and so this is a great opportunity. It's also an opportunity to think now about what we want to see in future. I mean, Merton's already declared a climate emergency, and there are people working on what we need to do in the big picture, but actually most people haven't thought much about it, don't know much about it. It's quite a struggle. I mean, there's been some good consultation, but it's a very small group of people. So the idea of trying to broaden, to help people to think a little bit more positively about what we'd like to do, help more people to think more positively about what we'd like to do, would be great. And then if we do that locally, maybe some of those ideas, we can work together on putting them into practice. Whether it's planting things or transport or planning issues, there's all sorts of possibilities. So that's, it really works well together. Now, the wider background, as you'll know, is that the Loving Earth project it's national. It's gone beyond national now. I mean, next week I've got a meeting like this with a bunch of people in France who want to do stuff there. It's really exciting, and we're hoping that people will tell their friends in different places about it, and they can do their bits, and that this time next year, we would have a big exhibition in Glasgow when COP26 is happening. That all has to be planned yet, because COP26 itself isn't planned, but we've got people kind of with their fingers in little pies in different places, and we'd really like to do that. So the idea of actually starting now to prepare stuff here and to do things here, and to have an exhibition, to bring people in, to show them what we'd like to do, and maybe keep building stuff locally, and at the same time being part of something much bigger, because we have to address the structural issues as well, and we have to have to deal with that, and show the decision makers that ordinary people are doing stuff, and we do want to make changes, and we are prepared for that. And yes, it's not all going to be bed of roses, but we understand that, and I think that's quite important. So that's where we are. So some of you already started making panels, which is brilliant, and I'm so pleased that you've got a little group. Is your group going to meet up again, Diane, at some point?
I think I will offer that. I think it's quite nice, it doesn't matter who comes, actually, if there's a lot of people come, we can actually break up into small groups now. We could do that, couldn't we, Linda, on this facility? You can do that. So, because it's quite nice just to chat while you're going through and share what you're doing and what have you. So I very much enjoyed it. It's a nice social chat, and we actually were a little bit productive, I think, because obviously some of these things you do have to sort of get your head around it, don't you, and do some planning. It's not all just doing, and that's certainly what I went away and did. So I'm actually doing an illustration of Sustainable Merton's community fridge, which I don't know if any of you have heard of that or not, but we've set this up really around the surplus food agenda. Excuse me, but during COVID, we've actually been helping people who live in what is called food insecurity, which is basically people who haven't got enough income to buy healthy food to get them through the week. So I think it's terribly important in terms of reducing waste food. That's really important to me. If we can stop supermarkets throwing away all this food and get it distributed to the likes of us, and then we can pass that out and exchange, and we're going to be doing workshops. So I'm kind of doing a reproduction of our promotional literature, which I guess means I don't have to be that imaginative, but I've started on it, and then I thought it looks very flat. So our little group last week inspired me to look at some other materials to put on it. So doing some applique and things. So I don't know whether you can see this, but I have a little person on mine. So I found some ribbon, and this is the little tartan trousers of my little man. I can't turn it whichever way. That's it.
That's good. Yeah,
that's probably going to be my most favorite thing on the whole thing, because I just think it's so dinky and sweet. But there we are. So that was the inspiration that I got from our group last week. So so I think that's nice. And actually, just listening to you there, Linda, I think a lot of people when we met last time were looking at nature. Actually, nature seemed to feature really, really heavily, which is brilliant. But actually, when you were talking, I thought actually things like the circular economy, where you represent one object and then you show it how it is made into others. I think that is something that would really kind of resonate with me. I don't quite know how you do it in that.
But can I get away from doing the panels now, because I think we've got other. This isn't the purpose of this meeting. I just wanted. It's really good that you're going to go on doing that, and that's a way to build up. We'll get to know each other, and we can. What my experience of I did 4 workshops at Wimbledon Library back in January, February, and we started talking about the sort of how to design the textiles and techniques and so on, and people were helping each other with that. But then after a bit, we started talking a bit more about why we'd chosen those topics and what we might do about it, and that was really helpful too, because they are so big, and so actually starting to talk about it is a really important part of the process of thinking, well, actually, yes, I can do that, and somebody else might say, yes, and you could do the other, and I've got a friend who's in a campaign about this, and so we can help each other with that. And perhaps, I mean, Sophie, if you're a community champion, I don't know what you do as a community champion, but you probably know little bits that some of us don't know so much about. So we can all bring in different kinds of information that we've got.
Well, it'd be good to share people's ideas on that, I think. So
Yeah.
one of the things that, obviously, we're only a small charity, and we would like to engage as many people as we can in this. So, you know, at the moment, we're probably on target to get 15 to 20 panels produced. Personally, I'd like to get 100, because I think that would just be lovely and give impact and all of that. But I'm always good at setting myself targets and things, and I am looking at applying for some funding to help us with the kind of management of this. But from you, in terms of looking at your own networks, in terms of how we can get the message out and influence people to participate, and maybe what role you may or may not be able to take in that. I mean, not all of us have networks, but that would be really useful. And you know, if we weren't in COVID, we would certainly be going to schools and seeing how they could participate. So the younger generation, I think, is really important as well. So I don't know if any of you got any ideas on that, but I think that's really what we just thought would be really good to share with you and to see. And this is my colleague from the Chamber of Commerce joining now. Hello, Caroline. That's all right. We're just talking about engagement with other groups. So
yeah, I mean, two of you haven't introduced yourself because we'd already started. Would you like to just sort of give us say who you are and a particular interest that you've got, or anything you'd like to say to introduce yourself to the others, very briefly?
Yeah, so it was when we went round at the beginning, we just asked you where you live, really. That, I don't know why I think that's important, but it gives me a sort of feeling for the borough and the mix of people that we have. And then what particularly, if anything, interests you about this project was really what the others have shared. So Farah, are you good to go on that? And then Caroline?
Yeah, so I did the very first session, I think, with you guys.
Oh,
so,
you left you had to leave early, didn't you? I'd forgotten that. Yeah.
I know I missed one because just some other stuff came up. But yeah, so briefly, so I'm living, so I'm sort of the Wimbledon Collieswood borders in sort of the Mead Park area. And actually, I was just thinking at the end of September, I think there's a bit of a flurry of activity with various people setting up Friends of Parks groups. So there's a Friends of Garfield Park and Wandle Meadows that's recently been set up. They have a Facebook group and it's not yet, and a Twitter account. So I was just thinking that in terms of promoting it, if you want to see if that produces any results, and I can ping that out to them and see if there are any interested crafty people. Is okay. I mean, I will admit it's a long time since I've done any sewings in school, so yeah, my stuff is going to be very amateurish. So in terms of reeling people in, I just want to make sure that I say, actually it doesn't matter, I'm assuming that you don't have to be an expert in any of this stuff, and it's really just about a creative approach to sustainability. So exactly. I think I was interested in it for a number of reasons, because I think I was already hooked into some stuff about sustainability. I'm a bit, I won't say I'm an obsessive about litter picking, but it feels a bit therapeutic to do something helpful. So I do some of that, and I also try really hard to retain any bit of fabric that, if clothes can't go to the charity shop, and I kind of think, well, I could do something with that. And I've stacked up a whole lot of stuff over years and had ideas, but never gotten around doing any of it. So mine's going to be as much sort of reuse as possible, of even just, I think the little bits of ribbon that you get in your clothes when you buy them. So I always cut them out because they annoy me. So that's a whole load of ribbon type stuff that I've collected. So the panel that I'm making, I'm going to try and use that to make plant stems, things like that. So I just wanted, an excuse to use up some of that partly.
That's lovely, lovely. Thank you, Caroline.
So sorry I'm so late. So I've always lived in Merton. So I born in Merton, went to school in Merton. I live in Rains Park now, so I've not moved very far. I just thought it just seemed like a nice idea to get involved, to do something a bit different, and that also something positive at the end of lockdown and all this terrible experience we're going through, for want of a better word. So I'm not an expert sewer either at all. I've done bits and pieces over the years, but it's very as and when. So I'm certainly no dressmaker or anything like that. I just thought it'd be nice to have sort of a positive legacy for the end of this. So I'll be interested to hear ideas and get some inspiration about what we can do.
So, I mean, Linda, it is interesting because when we were at Abundance, so many people said to us, oh, I'm not a very good sewer, and it's so therefore I can't do it. And really, somehow we got to get that message across, because it isn't actually about sewing capability. You could actually glue it all on or whatever. It is more about your story, isn't it?
Yeah,
and the integration of that.
Very much so. And it's nice, it's lovely that we've got, you know, we've got some panels that are made by people that are obviously professional textile artists, and some that are made by 7-year-old girls, and some by adults that have never sewn a button on before. And that's great. And actually we've got lots of videos on the Loving Earth Project website about different skill techniques you can use if you want to, and different materials you can use if you want to. But you don't have to. You just do what you've got, and that's where I think having the sort of Zoom chats just for people who are making panels can be really helpful. I mean, as well as the ones that Diana's running, we're doing the Loving Earth Project is doing them probably we'll do them once a month for anyone who wants to come along. We don't have many people, but we do have some really interesting swaps of discussions, and people who just starting out but aren't sure quite how to go about it, from people that have finished their panel but would like to just talk about it, and we ask each other, how did you do that bit, and so on. So I've learned a huge amount. I mean, I'm like like some of you like to experiment with stuff, and it's really liberating to be able to use some of these bits of stuff I've had hanging around, and know it doesn't have to fit, it doesn't have to go in the washing machine, I don't have to worry about whether it's going to stretch or anything. All it has to do is to have, actually I've got a couple of cardboard squares which are the right size for the panel, and that keeps it, that's all I need to know, that the final size. And then I can play around with that, and the design, yes, you need to plan, but it depends how you want to make it. I mean, sometimes it just changes, it takes its own way. So we started talking about how we can spread this out. We've got a strategy, really, if you like, of having resources on the website so that people can start on their own, and then they can come along to a discussion. But also, as we've done already, we've having sort of online workshops, and we might have some mini workshops when COVID regulations allow. Even if we get back to the rule of 6, some people may want to sort of say, well, we could have a little workshop in the church hall, or wherever in the right sort of space, and that people can do themselves. So I mean, Gina, it would be fantastic if you were into helping with that sort of thing, because to have somebody local who's doing that and be a sort of reference point, and maybe to work with Diana on the sort of Zoom chats, so that we've got, I mean, anyone else, of course, we're all experts in different things, but if it's something that you've got facilitation skills in this area, then that will be really, really helpful. Because if we can set up a whole series of chats, then there's always going to be somewhere for people to join in as they get along. And
it's certainly so. I mean, when we're allowed to do face to face, that's definitely something that I would be interested in doing. In terms of I mean, I don't, in terms of getting the word out, I don't know where everyone else lives, because only 2 or 3 people actually
around and play. I mean, I'm in Wimbledon Park.
So I'm in Collier's Wood.
I'm in Morden.
Mix. I mean, that's the thing. So, and I mean, I have got this. Well, we'll say where we all live. And you were in Wimbledon.
I live in Wimbledon, near by Dundonald Park. If anybody knows that. Yep.
Sophie is. I don't know where Sophie lives. Where do you live, Sophie?
Morden.
Well, there we are. You see, we've pretty much got
because
borough coverage.
I don't know about the other areas, but in Collierswood we've got Collierswood News and Views.
Collierswood is a particularly active place. I always think it's because Tom Walsh lives there.
Well, it's partly to do with that, but it's
coffee in the wood.
But we used to have something called Making Collierswood Happy. So there's lots of different groups, and so I'm linked into quite a few of those groups and people.
Where could I, Penny? Did you say whereabouts you live in Caroline?
Caroline's Rains Park, and Penny's really at the top of the St Helier by Rose Hill.
Okay.
So you know, that is pretty much. And then Genevieve, who was in our SMOO group, she's in Mitcham. We do have borough coverage, which is brilliant, actually.
Very good. Yes.
Yeah.
So I mean, what I was wondering was do we all have residents associations or something? I mean, Collierswood's got its own thingy, but if we've got a residents association, that's somewhere we could put something. If we've got, and there's the Wimbledon Society.
It's just getting the word out there, isn't it? I think sometimes you need, Linda, you need more than word, though. I mean, we would say we promote all over, but actually you need people that talk it up and say to people, like Gina's said there, really, and Farah, you have to convert people, don't you, on a kind of personal, I think, as well. And that's what the sort of advocacy networking role is about, really. It's just passing the word around, and if people want to get involved, then, you know, we'd be very happy to host some more introductory workshops and things like that, and then people can work in groups and as Linda says, meet. I mean, that was always the aim, that, you know, it is actually a social thing where you can actually meet people and do your thing at the same time. So Gina, you would be largely face-to-face stuff, would you?
I would prefer that. I mean, at the moment, I'm still in recovery from my operation, so I can't do anything like immediately.
Yeah.
I imagine in a few weeks.
After Christmas.
Yeah, definitely after Christmas I should be in it, and then I suppose I'd want to learn a bit more about it, and I'm happy to do online stuff, but I'd want to feel I'm really prepared, and so, you know, talk with or meet with whoever is doing it at the moment and work it out. But yeah, and I can imagine a situation. So I've got links with Collierswood Chorus, which is about 60 people. And I can imagine just putting something to them, and you probably get a half a dozen people wanting to take part, which I'd then be happy to facilitate something like that. But there are issues with online stuff, though. There's issues around using Zoom with more than a couple of people, so we'd have to have access to a business, whoever's got the business Zoom account.
Well, we do
you've got all that, so that's I'm just thinking practically. So
we can break out groups.
Sustainable Merton's got one, and Loving Earth's got one too, so we can manage that.
I think, you know, we'll need to see how it goes, and I think, you know, we've only kind of launched this, well, 4 weeks, so we've already got that many. I think it has great potential to spread, and obviously that's what we'd like to happen. And then, as I said, we'll then be looking at how we bring all the finished articles together, because obviously there's a piece of work there that they've got to be sent in, sort of put into the display, got the stories alongside, so that there's all of that to do. And then, as Linda says, you know, the aim is that they go on a touring exhibition, for want of a better word, isn't it, Linda? But I'd also love to have an exhibition in this borough as well. That would be something that I would love to achieve.
I mean, I hope we can have an exhibition if we aim to get the sort of panels back sort of by Easter sort of time. We just have to see how things go, of course. But have an exhibition, you know, in May, sort of May, June, and then they can go off elsewhere. And then when the touring is finished, we can bring them back to Merton.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, look out for a sort of longer term home for them. But going back to spreading the word, I think that's the key thing now. I mean, I think, you know, some schools or youth groups will have clubs and so on. Young people as young as 7 can do this if they want to. Of course, not many of them won't want to, but some of them might. And I'm just wondering if anyone's got connections with guides or woodcraft folk or anything like that, for example, or other young people's.
I know someone who runs the woodcraft folk in Colliers Wood.
Because that might be quite a nice thing to do. I mean, it's one of the things when they can't actually meet. It's something that, I mean, I know that some of the Quaker young people have kind of chat sessions, you know, for an hour or so once a week online, and to have a project that they can do, and young people will go off and do it very quickly if they want to do it, but actually talking about it is really good too, and actually getting them, it's really helpful for them to feel they can do something, because a lot of them are very, very anxious about climate issues, and they don't have much power or choices. But you know, when I did a workshop at Bishop Gilpin School with some 8-9-year-olds who'd been studying the Amazon, and the teacher wanted something that would kind of link up what they'd been learning about with what they could do in their own life. And so they came away with sort of plans. Well, they were going to ask their parents if they could not eat meat, because beef is the main reason that the Amazon's being cut down. So if you cut down if you lower the demand for beef, then there's less incentive to cut down the rainforest. Similarly with palm oil, you know, and so on. So they were going to ask, they weren't going to eat chocolate that had palm oil in it. And it's a little thing, but it's making a connection that they can learn about. And they were so pleased. I can imagine the parents may have some interesting conversations that night. But that's what you have to do, you know. And it's sometimes we need to be challenged by the young people, and they can see so clearly. So if anyone has connections there. The other thing is with faith groups, you know, many mosques and churches and synagogues and so on. All the main faith groups are looking out for wanting to do stuff on the environment and don't quite know what to do. And of course, some people in each group will be doing things, but there may be other people that would be interested in doing some of this. Well, because one of the things we find is that if you start making some textile like a little panel like that, you start talking to people about it, and you have really interesting conversations that you would never have had otherwise. And that's one of the good things about it. And you know. What other connections do we have? We did have someone who was interested in doing it with the deaf charity. I don't know if they've got in touch with you since then.
Yeah, no, I've had some communication with them. I think for me, it's you know, I think in the Merton community, there's an awful lot of networks. I think it's more how people take it and make it happen.
Yeah.
So if I was taking it out somewhere, I'd want to be confident that I could do what I'm meant to be doing, and get people to produce what is kind of required, if you see what I mean. That and I think if you've got that, it's almost like a toolkit, isn't it? And you say to people, go away and do it and come back to us with your contributions by such and such a date. But I don't know if that meets the sort of how you would run it, Linda, but I think that is achievable in this borough because of the networks that we have, actually.
Well, I'd be very happy to run a little workshop for would-be facilitators, if you like. Right. But I think what we want to do is to see who else there would be who would like to do that. And so, you know, over the next few weeks to try and spread the word and see if there are people who would like to do something. And it may be that that some of you who are already making panels and so on would like to do that. It's a good idea probably to have a couple of people anyway, because then you can kind of support each other and so on. You know, if you're using Zoom, or if you've got people that are having particular difficulties, or you want someone who knows about textiles and someone who knows a bit about the environment, is an ideal combination, really. It would be great to get some people from the schools involved, and I just wonder whether, Diana, there's any way we can get something circulated through the borough that goes to local schools.
Right now, Linda, the schools would not be at the top of my list. I think they're overwhelmed with being able to run as they are, and it's the resource to get that message in. So I think unless someone can directly influence the school, I personally, it's very sad, but I think it's easier to achieve through other networks. And there are plenty of networks with young people in them. But I see school projects maybe as a second stage.
Yeah, and the other thing was the sort of the food banks and the people that are helping the people that are having real difficulties.
Exactly.
Because people who are having real difficulties with COVID, it's not just the physical stuff they need, it's the mental stuff. And so I don't know if there's opportunities there. And
there is through GPs and social prescribing and all that. There's huge potential. It just all has to be promoted, and it all has to be managed, and that's where everything comes in. And Penny's got her hand up. Go ahead, Penny.
I think Linda, you've touched on something that's very important about the people who are in semi-isolation, which I would count myself. I would say that being somebody within that position, trying to communicate with other people is extraordinarily difficult. Everything you try, there are weeks of waiting, literally weeks of waiting to get anything. I mean, this is completely off the wall as far as this is concerned, but I needed my prescription and I can't go to the chemists. So you phone the chemist and they say you've got to get in touch with this voluntary service within Merton in order for them to do it. Well, I got in touch with them last Monday and was assured that my prescription would be here by Wednesday. And we're now the following Wednesday and it still hasn't come because the volunteers are so absolutely overwhelmed. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying I understand it. But if we're going to go down that route at all, we're going to have to be aware that actually to get in touch with the people we want to get in touch with, the whole chain network is falling apart because it's just not strong enough to hold on to everything it's got to do. And I'm sure that there are hundreds, if not thousands of people like myself who are in lock-in, as I call it, as lockdown, who would be very interested. But how we actually communicate with them, unless it's through another organisation, I don't know. I mean, I was lucky, a friend told me, so I know that this was happening.
I hear what you're saying, Penny, and actually I am connected into that network and I can take that straight back to them because that should not be happening. I'm told they have a glut of volunteers, so it's the infrastructure. It's again all management, isn't it? It's easy to
I won't tell you what the chemist said today. Luckily, the chemist has known me for very many years, unfortunately. I wish I had a personal relationship with the chemist, but anyway, I don't mean personal, I mean they are having extraordinary problems, and it's all sorts of things like that where there's a lot of people with a great deal of goodwill who want to help, who are involved, who are prepared to help, but there's a tier above them and the communication seems to fall into a big manhole cover and never come up again.
I think Anne wanted to say something.
I was just thinking that, you know, we're trying to reach out to people. I'm not quite sure where libraries stand at the moment, but they should be a sort of central base, shouldn't they, in Rains Park, in Colliers Wood, here in Wimbledon, if there's something that we could do along those lines.
Well, you mean get the information out through them?
Yeah. Some link, maybe. I'm just that's come to my mind, that I know, you know, I look at the, I don't know if we're allowed in at the libraries. I'm a little bit ignorant there, but I know that I always, you know, look at the notice board in the library. I'm just thinking that's the sort of base place for people to go on the whole.
Yeah,
we might have more luck, you know, when we come out of this particular lockdown with libraries, but it might be a route.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think lockdown is quite a big barrier to being able to do things in sort of the ways that we would normally do. And I've, you know, it is about managing demand as well. So that's why, as I said, I'm trying to get some funding, which will then give us a bit more resource to manage demand, because there's absolutely no reason why we can't get the message out through that community response hub, and actually through the council's press office as well. There's no reason why not, but we have actually got to be able to cope with the demand that comes through, and not let people down, because I wouldn't want that to happen.
Well, you see, I think we can do that quite easily, you see, because one of the things that, I mean, as I said, the Loving Earth project started before all of this, but when it suddenly came down, you know, we had a few people together, and there's a lot of resources which we've got on the website, so that people that are on the internet can access those resources, and it's a matter of pointing them to them. And those, if we've got a combination of, well, this document gives you about the, you know, the that's all you actually need to know to do this project. If we, as long as people know that that's there, and then we can put up on perhaps Sustainable Merton and the Loving Earth project website, we're going to have these Zoom talks and so on, that people can connect up through that. If we can plan that on a regular basis, and we've got, Gina may not have seen yet, but on the Loving Earth there are some suggestions for different kinds of workshops, so they can be adapted to this. So, you know, if you want to do a workshop with a group of people who aren't probably going to do a textile panel, but they can go through the meditation and do a design and have some conversation about it, and then some of them may well go off and do the textile. Or
what's about getting something in the Merton News, the little magazine that comes out?
My Merton, yeah.
My Merton. Is it possible to put something in that?
Potentially. It is a 3-month run-in, but yeah, I'll try and get something through to the press office there. They produce that 3 months in advance. So.
Oh, right.
That's okay.
All right.
That's
okay.
You
can start in February, and
that's okay. That will be brilliant. Yeah. I mean, in January we've got there's a little gallery in Walton-on-Thames that is planning to have a display of all the panels that we've got so far. So any panels that are completed with me and sent to me by about the middle of December can go into that exhibition, and they can still come back to Merton afterwards, of course. And that's going to be up for COVID permitting for a month. I expect we'll get another lockdown at some point there, but they're also planning a whole lot of online events to go with that. So they will be having some workshops and some discussions and some sustainable, you know, some stuff about some of the environmental issues and so on there. So that would be, you know, I hope we can log in to that. But yeah, I think, I mean, there are resources. I think all we need to make sure that we put something on the Sustainable Merton website with the right pointers in. And I don't think we need to worry about being overwhelmed with that. And we just see how that evolves, really. Because yes, it would be very good to get a sort of central sort of administrator, and who could seek out venues for possible shows and stuff. I mean, I've been thinking recently, I think there's probably a good chance if someone can negotiate it, there's an awful lot of shops closing, you know, and why not see if we can get maybe a couple of weeks in Wimbledon, a couple of weeks in Colliers Wood, or you know, different bits around the place.
Yeah, excellent idea.
Yeah.
Court might be up there.
And the libraries, actually. Sorry, Caroline, what were you saying? Centre Court, yeah. I mean, Caroline and I know the manager of Centre.
Brilliant.
So that's wearing our other hat, my other hat. But you know, yeah, they are doing pop-up shops in Centre Court in vacant premises. So yeah,
and they've got a green agenda as well, haven't they?
what? Sorry, Caroline.
But their green agenda to support.
Very much so. Yeah,
we tick both boxes for them.
Yeah, their year. You'll be interested, Linda. They are meant to be doing their green sustainable year. They must have been closed for half of it.
I see that the zero shop's moving in there too. So what would be lovely is if we could get some posters up in Centre Court, for example. That's not difficult.
No,
and then maybe when the lockdown eases, we could have maybe a couple of pop-up workshops in different places.
I'd be very happy to put a poster up in Fielders, you know, the art shop. I go in there a lot for materials. So when it reopens, I'd be very happy to put a poster up in there for a start. I'm trying to think of some other places at the moment. I can just think of the library and possibly Fielders, but I'll put my thinking cap on.
It's yeah, ideal, isn't it? No, absolutely.
They have lots of I mean, I really what you want people to do is recycle art materials and textiles, but they have amazing textiles in Fielders now.
Okay. Good.
Have you already I can't remember if I've seen it, but I get a newsletter, an email from the council, certainly during COVID.
As a resident.
Yeah, so have you already put something out through that? Because it does have activities in there as well.
I haven't, I mean, we've done our own communications, and we can certainly go wider. My challenge is I don't have a resource within our charity to do this. So that's why I'm looking to just get a small amount of money, which I'm should be able to bid for next week. It's been delayed where I'm trying to get the money from, which is why it's behind. But if we can get a small amount of money, that will allow someone to, you know, start producing posters and liaise with people to get the information out there. So yeah, I think that's very, very doable. And, you know, if people start in the new year, they've still got 3 months, haven't they? So it's still very achievable. So I think that discussion this evening really helpful. Thank you. And if any of you've got any other ideas or anything, just please email me and Linda, and we can take that on board, really. But I think that was really, really helpful. And I think what we're kind of looking at, aren't we, is giving you, as Linda says, the main information sheet does give you the tools actually, but maybe if we give you a kind of something promotional that you can send to people, because it's probably all going to be electronic at the moment, that would be a good, you know, I'd say it'd be like a postcard if we printed it.
I was going to say a postcard is good, and I mean I've got some postcards printed for the sort of main Loving Earth project, and that's quite handy because it's got pictures on the front and it's got email address, and that's it. So you can just put that on a notice board if you want, and that's quite handy to have that with. But you do have to have the we haven't done that with this sheet. We haven't done that with this sheet. Something to think about. But also you can, you know, we've got a little bit on the back and space to write, so you can send it to somebody. But yes, if we can do that to email out and say, I just wondered whether Sophie had any other thoughts, because as a sort of community champion, you know, I don't know quite how your role, whether you see there's a connection there.
So kind of what I've been doing as a community champion is focusing specifically on waste and helping with kind of creating different resources to do with waste and coming back to people's questions on that. So it's kind of a little bit of like it's not so much of a networking kind of role in that sense. And I know that this project did come through via kind of all of the Sustainable Merton communications that me and I assume all the other champions do receive. But I think that there's some other kind of specific groups that kind of tied with Sustainable Merton that could be interested, like some of the growing groups, like at the community gardens and things like that. So I don't know if it would be kind of worth specifically reaching out again, rather than in a newsletter format where people might skim read, but to specific kind of groups that are associated. And other than that, I'll put my thinking cap on and certainly email if I think of anything specific.
But Sophie's done an amazing piece of work on what you do with waste that no one knows where it belongs. That's your spreadsheet, isn't it, Sophie?
So that's Alison, who's also
that's Alison, that's not you.
Her amazing spreadsheet. It's really good. But we're working on kind of bringing together a bigger kind of handbook at the moment on various different aspects of waste at the moment.
Yeah, lovely.
Well, that's brilliant. What I was wondering would be that, you know, once we've got the sort of momentum going on making panels, I was wondering whether we might want to, if say we had a couple of Zoom evenings a month, which were sort of, you know, mostly for people who are interested and wanting to chat, but from time to time you could have one. Well, we've got a lot of things that, you know, if people want to know a bit more about waste, because they're worried about plastic or about litter or whatever, you could come along and we could have a themed one perhaps each month, and another one about how to rewild or what's happening to Merton's trees or something like that, so that we could bring in people who are interested in that area. They would connect up with this project, and then they might go away and tell other people who, you know, sort of, so we'd have a sharing of information, but we might have a bit of a snowballing of the project as well. And we could use, some people might want to make panels that are specifically about something that they're doing. So, you know, the community garden or the allotment, or, I mean, you're doing the fridge, but we could have others about actually what some of the really good things that Merton's doing as a borough, you know.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'd say air quality, you know, if you look at the local traffic schemes, the school streets, there's mountains of them, isn't there, really?
Yep.
Air quality monitoring, there's many passionate people involved in all of those things.
And we can be very positive about that. And I think politically that's quite important, because there's always, you know, when they put the car parking prices up, or they put a 20 mile an hour, there's always a bit of a backlash. But actually to show that, well, yeah, but we actually think it's a good thing as well. You know, that's quite helpful. And also caring for our streets and caring for our, this big thing about, anyway.
Yeah.
So I wonder whether we might have a strategy to maybe, you know, perhaps from January for the next, you know, have 2 or 3 different events that would be organised by this, with this project in mind, but also connecting up with some of the other things. I think that would be really nice.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. So I think we've got some good stuff there. Shall we kind of wrap up now, I think?
Farah would like to say something.
Yeah.
You're muted.
Yeah, it was just an idea that just popped into my head. So if there are people who would like to do it, but who don't have, for whatever reason, access to many materials, is there another task to do to sort of bundle up some materials that can be ready to collect from somewhere, with our weird lockdown, end of lockdown, when's it all going to end, kind of like, you know, that some way that they can be conveyed as like a small package of a needle and thread, or, you know, in a bit of, you know, some.
I think that would be brilliant. That would be
we were looking. We were looking at a basic toolkit for those that don't have access to that, and then we were also looking at whether people could not swap but supply each other, because a number of people do have an awful lot of I don't know what you call it, fabrics and stores of
stash. Technical term.
Stash. It seems
I've got
quite
several
a lot of people
stashes.
have stashes.
Yeah.
For
I
sure.
think what would be very nice, I mean, if you can get some funding for somebody to be a sort of central contact point, I think that will be brilliant. But meanwhile, I mean, I think what would be brilliant is if anyone wanted to put together, if anyone's got a stash and doesn't, wants to have a happy afternoon going through it, putting together perhaps 2 or 3 bits that would be big enough for a base, so about 40 by 40, and then a few little odds and bits and pieces to make a start. It doesn't have to be a complete thing, and it gives some people a sort of choice to start with, and a thin needle and a fat needle sort of thing. And then we could take it from there. I mean, people who haven't got any sewing materials at all, if we do a bit of scouting around, big supermarkets sell for about £2 or £3 a basic sewing kit with little scissors and needles and a few bits of thread and stuff, a couple of buttons. So I think that's the sort of thing we could do, and we could probably find a bit of, if there's anyone who's desperate and hasn't got a pair of scissors, we can probably find some money for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So if anyone feels they'd like to, they've got stuff they want to get rid, so we could perhaps put something out about that.
Yeah,
I the project coming on.
Yeah, yeah. I've got some extra material and bits and bobs. If anybody wants to contact me, if they haven't got some bits of fabric, I'm not so good on needles, but I've got plenty of extra fabric because I used to be a teacher, so I've got quite a lot.
Okay, brilliant.
That's brilliant, and certainly we talked about that last week with Penny and the others. So some of those have stashes for sure, because I saw them. But that's great, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Good.
You've already given me stuff. So we could do, we probably need a sort of little, well, we need to talk a bit about communications, really.
Yeah, so I'll take that away, Linda, and look at it in terms of that proposal that I'm putting forward. And I will certainly make some contact with the to get out into newsletters in the borough anyway. I can do that. So
I mean, if anyone's willing to be a sort of contact point for people materials issues, I mean, perhaps we could see if amongst the people, not necessarily people who are here now, there's somebody might. I mean, I don't think there's going to be large numbers of people at this point, but there might later on, if we get a lot of people, for example, from the food bank who want to participate, and we can tell them we need somewhere for them to ask, and then who could put the word out and say, well, we've got 3 or 4 people that have got a stash. We need to parcel it up. And while we're while we're under this lockdown, materials are tricky. We'd have to be able to put a set of things in the post, but that can be done. But when it eases up a little bit and we can have workshops, then I think that's the time when we might want some more.
Yeah, definitely. Good.
Thank you all. You can reach me on the Loving Earth Project email address, which you've got on the thing, and you know how to reach Diana if you've got thoughts or suggestions or offers or anything like that. And I will note, Gina, that you'd be willing to do some workshopy things, but get in touch if if something material. If you want to start doing stuff and you want to start thinking about it more, just get in touch. And
yeah, I'm not really, health-wise okay until probably, I think, the new year, to be on the safe side.
That's fine. So, I think most people aren't going to start new projects till then anyway. On the other hand, if you don't know what to give somebody for Christmas, you can give them a stash of stuff to start a Loving Earth project.
Lovely. And I will put out to the network that have signed up. I will offer these 2 weekly workshops as well, just as get-togethers. I think that's just nice to do, really.
Lovely.
Thank you. Yeah.
So
very much. Yes.
And so we'll be in touch. And it's lovely to see you all. Thank you for joining us tonight. And I hope you've got some inspiration as well. And
you can join you're welcome to join other Loving Earth project online things as well, you know, which even if you're doing the Merton version of it, that's fine, and that will inspire other people, I think, too.
Good.
Excellent. Thank you. Lovely to meet you.
Right. It's lovely to meet you all. Have a good evening. What's left
Yep.
of it.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank
Be
you.
in touch.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Everybody, thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.